It's been a minute. I haven't seen Mike for 3 years or something.
Salimiane, man. Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. Tunakutana out of the country. We didn't plan about this, but here we are from, like they say, Seattle, here in Washington State. We're talking about sports. We are passionate about this thing. And I've come to realize that, unfortunately, when you're cut from this cloth, you never change. So we are meeting here in the US. We should be having a good time, but here we are sitting down talking about issues to do with sports and governance in Kenya, and I want to narrow it down to rugby because of the politics that is going on, but we will be all over the place. We are just trying to talk about what it is that we need to do. So I'm privileged in this very first and probably the only one for this season from here in Washington State. In this podcast, I'm talking to Michael Kwambo, household name in rugby circles. Maybe you may not know him, but you know, Kenya Rugby Union Communications, the Rugby 7s, 15s teams. If you have seen communications from them, you're a journalist, you're a consumer of those press releases. They've had his brain. So we are here to talk about the shenanigans of Kenyan sports administration, and we found ourselves, I said, Mike, let's just do this as a podcast. So let's begin. It's open. We are talking about what is happening. First of all, let's begin with the Harambee Stars game that we watched early today. What did you make of that game? New administration, you know, 3 months in, this is the 4th month, you know, first home game in 4 years. And by the way, Mike, you were part of the caretaker committee. We will get into that.
Yeah.
What did you make of that game, and how, you know, Hussein Mohammed has got into this role? Imekuwaje for you?
I think there's been a refreshing change. Let's face it. Previous regime, in my opinion, was anti-football in many ways. Right from people having divergent opinions, right from the quality of the league. When you have league matches being played at Utali grounds, it's a disaster. When you have games being played at midweek at 1 p.m. on a weekday, yeah, I've got 50 bob in my pocket. Unaniambia nende nione game ya AFC na KCB. I need to make money. You know, that was absolutely wrong. When you find the fact that independent-minded players, I know quite a number who will not mention, some are close friends, for some reason or another, being edged out of the team.
Being victimized for their voice.
Yeah. Some even being dropped. I remember in the build-up to the 2019 AFCON,
yeah,
one player who I know is very lethal, is very what do you call it? He's reliable in front of goal. Was dropped because, quote unquote, it was said that he's overweight. But this guy is a proven finisher. I'll tell you the guy after the show. He's a good friend.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
We are talking openly, and you know, one of the things that will make a difference is when we are able to speak truth to power.
Yeah, we're speaking truth
for purposes of protecting the individual. You would not mention
I'll not mention it,
but then the leadership we will call it out in the strongest terms possible.
Yeah, the fact that if you had a divergent view, you were banned from going to cover the game. In that extent, it's a refreshing change. The fact that Harambee Stars was playing its games away from home, there was no effort being made.
For political reasons, by the way, I dare say. If you ask me, and you remember from what we did with the caretaker committee, you were inside, I was outside.
Yeah.
But then we were on the same page in terms of what needed to be done to sort out the federation. But you know, I still believe Mike to date. And I remember that night we sat somewhere up on Nyayo Stadium, and I told you guys, this whole...
At Kuche, we can name the place.
Yeah, Kuche. And I told you guys, the decision by CAF at Kenya has no stadium that meets international standards was political, because somebody wanted to be the hero, and the then CS, who were taking the decisions that were unpopular, was being vilified because ati amesema ameweka caretaker committee. So we know what happened, and we know even until now what happened about that. So for me, I am happy that we've got Hussein come in, and it's refreshing, like you're saying.
Then one more thing to add, sorry to say, I'm still on that refreshing change.
Mm-hmm.
The football being played. In Engine Firat, we had a conman, we had a plumber, we had a guy who was, I don't know, even me, I could coach my dome from Kakamega High School, Sejero House, to play more attractive football than any of Engine Firat.
Richie says,
take that to the bank.
Tourist.
Yeah.
Tourist, based in Kilimani.
It was a tourist based in Kilimani. I mean, you'd watch that football. Somehow they'd score, but literally it was, in Kilua we say, hupa hutie. You know, beat it goes. That's a kind of football. So the refreshing change comes in the way that Harambee Stars is finally playing the football that we know that they can play. Because it didn't make sense that you've got all these quality players straddled across various leagues in Africa and around the world who are quality. But when they come to that Harambee Stars under Engine Firat, they are worse than our local bar team.
There was nothing. And talking about refreshing, that goal by Bejaba, that boy, I mean, it's been long since we saw a goal like that. Yeah. And the last time, I remember we had something. It was probably better than what we saw. It took us to the Africa Cup of Nations. Denis Oliech, that goal, was it in 2004?
2003 at Kasarani against Cape Verde.
Yeah, against Cape Verde, that sent us to the AFCON then.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the kind of freshness that we are looking for. And I know there's still a lot to talk about, but coming to the game, you know, and Benny McCarthy coming in, what are your thoughts about Benny? Because personally, by the way, and we are having this podcast as, you know, as peers, as colleagues, so it is not at me nakuuliza swali. I mean, we are just having a conversation here. For me, I think Benny was a good choice for a coach. I have always admired Benny from his playing days. What is your take on what is going on in that respect? And I know it is too soon to expect a lot. By the way, I had zero expectations, and I told you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we lost, I'll be honest, this might be unpopular, but haijaniuma because I had no expectations that tunaenda kushinda.
Tuko wengi, hata mimi sikuwa na expectations because even game ya Gambia on Thursday sikuwa na expectations. In fact, your game nilikuwa naangalia kani kwa kitanda, so you know, I'm drifting, and at 2-0 I was like, maybe it should be lights out for me. Then suddenly it pena. Then Baosaya Bajaber ikaingia, nikasema hiyo singizi wacha ikae, na nilikuwa naenda shughuli baadaye. Kasema wacha ikae, hii game nitaona kesi italipa huko mbele. And it just showed you there's a fighting spirit, because previous Harambee Stars teams would have folded at 2-0, game ilishata 6-0.
Yeah.
But maybe for other reasons apart from just folding on the pitch of play. So you could see the fight, you could see that there's a hunger here. And what for me it shows that Benny McCarthy, I've seen him being an analyst on SuperSport. He's a straight talker. Yeah. He was a sharpshooter, he's a straight talker, he's a motivator. He expects nothing but the best. The fact that he even receives glowing tribute from people who are in the current Manchester United squad that he coached speaks to his ability to get to players.
And you know, for him to have been a part of the coaching staff at Manchester United speaks volumes about his qualities.
Absolutely. And remember, he was in the Porto team that won the 2004 Champions League with Jose Mourinho. So this is he's proven on the field of play. He had a decent stint at Amazulu in South Africa.
Yeah.
So I think it's something good. But now Kenyans, hold their horses. 2 games in, and we want to go to the World Cup. Aita Zekala.
You know, and that is we will. I don't want us. That is the irony.
Yeah.
You know, after, and I'm sorry to say, I am conflicted on this. After 8 years of the backwardness that we had under the previous regime of Nick Mwendwa, it would be, you know, putting the cart before the horse.
Yes.
To expect that we are actually qualifying for the World Cup to come and play here in the US in 13 months' time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unrealistic, but then we are in it. We want to see the country doing well. We want to see the team win. We want to see those results. But let's get, just before we drift onto the reason why we wanted to have this podcast in the first place, In terms of the administration that Hussein Mohammed has started, they say siku njema huonekana asubuhi. And I'm going to put you on the spot about this because I have my own opinion, and Hussein, he knows. I've spoken with him one-on-one. I have told him what I expect. There are things that I told him. There are things that I expect him to do. I will give him the benefit of the time. But then, siku njema huonekana asubuhi. How has your asubuhi of Hussein Mohammed regime looked like?
I think coming from the thunderstorms, the clouds, the rainstorm of Nick Mwendo's regime, I think it has been good. It can be better, but it has been good. There's been a refreshing change. I'd like to say there's been more openness, and for me, I'll paraphrase it. I'll say there's been more openness, and one thing that hit me is that it's like Kenyans have been released from a chokehold, because even the stadium, it was full, and people doubted it. Yes, there have been issues of ticket scalping, but that's neither here nor there. The fact that the stadium was full, and
those were, you could count heads.
Yes.
In thousands.
Yes.
At Nyayo Stadium, and more outside wanting to come in. So, for me, those are good take homes.
Yes.
And Hussein, his job is cut out.
Yeah.
And as you finish your thought before we move on to rugby, because that is what I wanted us to talk about, what would you put on his in-tray?
On his entry,
he's on 4 months now.
He's on 4 months
He
now.
came in on December 7th. That is when he was elected. So we are counting. This is the 5th. It's actually January, Feb, March. So 4 months, going to 5 now.
I think.
What would your in-tray for him look like?
He needs to build goodwill with the public, with the corporate world, because that is something that had been lost. Kenyan football had been tarnished by match fixing, by indiscipline, by cases of harassment, sexual harassment. These are things that are always, they're swept under the carpet. So I think perception, he's been working on it, still needs to work on it some more, because once you're perceived to be good, I think now the goodwill starts coming in. There's still skeletons in the closet. Those ones now need to be shaken out. You just have to say, this is where we want to go. So, for example, I'd mentioned it a few moments ago. Let's rethink how we want to play. Let's rethink, what do we want from our league? What do we want from our football as well? Yeah. Not only from play, from infrastructure, from the opportunities that it can create for people. You need to make football cool again. So he's got his work cut out, and more importantly, how can you make this a safe space for everybody, both players, journalists, and the public alike, because issues like hooliganism are still there. And for me, it's not necessarily like the riots and everything, but like, for example, when you decide to accost a referee because a decision didn't go away, these are things that you need to be. It's a political game as well, so you need to be seen that you're doing something, and I think that way you'll be able to do something, because now the skeptical people will be able to come and support you and give you the impetus going forward. So his work is cut out, and then this is it's a rather, it sounds trivial, but it still matters to me. Let's decide what is our national identity in terms of colors, in terms of kit, because red, we've understood, is now the predominant home kit, but we keep interchanging. These are the little things, because I need to have a brand. You see, like Seattle here, the colors of Seattle, the sporting colors is actually blue and green.
Yeah.
The Seahawks wear it, the Seattle Sounders
wear it,
the Mariners wear it, the Seattle Kraken, the ice hockey team, and it's easy to identify that. So I mean, the brand, he really has to work on
that predictability for the fans to feel like they are a part of the team when the players are coming out, and the fans can also don that, because we are playing at home, so we know what to expect from the team in terms of what they're putting on.
Yeah. So simply put, building the brand, that for me is the entry, but building the brand is, there are so many parts to it, so he's got his work cut out.
And Hussein, my brother, he is telling you something that we've talked about, and we will be patient with you, but The only other thing, like I have told you before, and this goes to anybody that is working with you, Harold as the CEO and Mariga, the vice president, all the different committees that have come in, Kinaubango, we have expectations from you guys. We will be patient, but patience yetu iko hivi. Tutaanza. If you don't meet our expectations, and our expectations are not unrealistic, Mike. Our expectations are that you can govern the game well, and we can be able to see that, the structure and the system is working for the, the cross cuts, the different stakeholders that are involved in the game. The players, the coaches, the administrators of the game, from the national all the way down. But probably we want to see more at the base level, uko grassroots mashinani. If we build it from there, Mike, I believe that that is now performance at the top level becomes a natural consequence, because the sporting powerhouses that we talk about, countries that have risen, you talk about closer home South Africa, they're the best model you can look at. You can look at the likes of Australia. Perennially they are the only country that sends the highest number of athletes to the Olympics. So those are the little things that we are looking at, and we are saying, okay, you do your thing, we will be patient. There are certain things we've talked about, and we will expect that you do the right thing. Mike, tuingie kwa rugby. I want to call it the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't know whose side you are on, but I would expect you to be on the side of the people and the right side of things.
Yeah.
Ile upuzi inaendelea KRU. What's going on?
Watu wako na njaa. It's all about them. So people don't want to serve the game. People want to serve their own interests. It's all about satisfying the people who voted for you, making sure your pockets are filled. And with that, the ethos that come around governing the game are lost. Plain and simple.
So, Sasha, chairman, is a man under siege.
Yeah.
And I've seen, documents flying, accusations left, right, center. I have seen, fee notes for legal services amounting to millions. What exactly? So who is Sasha, the person being held at ransom to satisfy the selfish interests of the voters or the delegates, as it were, or what it?
Yeah, he's being held at ransom. I'll say that without fear. He's being held at ransom because he's stood in the way of people lining up their pockets. Bringing in their cronies in terms of business and other opportunities. Plain and simple. Sasha wants to run the game as it should be, and that means being above board. If you've got a conflict of interest, you should declare it, and the decent thing after that is stop doing what you're doing, either with the organization or with the party that is serving the organization. Plain and simple. It's not rocket science. There's people who probably their terms have ended under the current Sports Act. I feel for that one. Yes, there's a push for them not to vie for office, but I feel for that one because they'll be coming up for re-election in 2006, or their terms will be expiring in 2006. I think for that particular
2026.
One, 2026. So I was thinking about 2006. I think for that one, he should, in my honest opinion, just let their terms expire. And they're bound by the Sports Act to not run again. That's how to go. But the long and short is that this is where we want to take our rugby. But there's people who want to profit from it.
Let's talk about how this politics and probably we will show some graphics of what exactly we're talking about. I saw legal fees, somebody claiming 17 million out of, I don't know whether that money was ever paid, but I don't want to get into the details of that because these are matters that have been in court, and frankly speaking, yes, I've read through, but I don't have quite the historical background of it in fine detail for me to speak about it. But let's talk about how all this is what Sasha is trying to do, and this is your word based on your experience and interactions. You know him better than I do, and the other people. I have seen Philip Jalango's name is everywhere on every little thing that is being complained about from the sponsors and the different partners that are working with KRU. Is he the villain?
One of several villains, because these issues have been long-standing. It's over a decade now. 2013, probably that's when we started having issues. We had a sponsor, mobile phone service provider, Safaricom, coming on board, and because of the amounts of money and all, people want to run these committees. And it's really not about running them for effective management, but it's running them to ensure that things go our way, that we wield power.
Mtu ako kwa supu pia.
Mtu ako kwa supu pia. So ujamaa anatoka mwingine anaingia. And it comes to a place where even sponsor na demand that we need to do things in a certain way, but because when mtu uko kwa ofisi unamuongelesha vibaya. And what does the sponsor do? The sponsor pulls the plug and they say, this is what happened. Kuna jamaa hapa alituongelesha vibaya. Because of that, this is what's not going to happen. There are decisions that we made probably in terms of like running an event. We used to have the Bamburi Rugby Super Series, very good events that we had to support 15s rugby. It died in 2014. It was revived last year. But again, by the time it was now on its knees, it's because arbitrary decisions were made. Look, you've started an event, you've created brands around the participating teams. We had teams with local names, with names related to animals in Kenya.
Yeah.
Lions, rhinos, cheetahs, buffaloes, and then there's the sharks.
Yeah.
So somebody decides that's not representative enough. We need to change these names into Kiswahili. A friend of ours in the media, for the longest point, still complains that he did the translations and never was compensated. But that again is besides the point. You've made changes that even catch the sponsor unawares. And remember, the sponsor is also thriving on the traction from these things for brand identity.
Absolutely.
It could be a good idea, poorly executed, right? You go ahead to have transgressions against the people who are sponsoring the events, calling sponsors names, demanding things from them, and you expect sponsors to stay. They're not going to stay. Yeah.
So, how is all this affecting performance of our teams? And I mean, people talk about this. Sevens, for example, we got relegated. Could this be one of the reasons that we got relegated?
Yeah.
And how then do we? And I want to be very categorical that as an entity, as Kurunzi News, we are on the right side and we are on the side of the people. And you may not mention names, but I can. And if they have a problem, let them deal with us.
See him.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Because, for a very long time, mediocrity has been mainstreamed into our way of doing things because we want to be modest, we want to be decent. Oh, President Mongea, sijui nini. But then, we've lived our life for so long.
Yeah.
Things have to change. Yeah. That's why I'm asking, how do we then get these people out? Number one. Number two, how do we make sure that the game, the performance of the team, the player, the structure that we so desire, those of us who have an idea of what good governance in sport is supposed to be, want to see, how do we create and ring fence many other sashas so that whatever they are doing, they are being fought, yes, but then we are out here and we are saying this is the right thing, we are going to defend. And by the way, it is okay to accuse me that I'm holding brief for Sasha, but as long as I saw, the long list of complaints against certain individuals, and I'll mention them. Philip Jalango, he was on every single accusation on that list. I'm like, okay, look, what is going on here? But how do we get out of that, Mike? And we, those of us who have gone to school, we know that what is happening is not right.
Yeah. Now, before we get into how we get out of that, you asked a question, how did we get there? Sponsor attrition. Remember, when 2025, by 2015, we had pissed off virtually all our sponsors. But it didn't start then. It started a few years earlier, when you now feel, yes, the sponsor is coming in. You now feel that you can control how
entitlement.
The entitlement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they glossed it over. But when Bamburi pulled the plug, that was the start of it. That time, Kenya Sevens was still being sponsored by Kenya Airways. But Kenya Airways were going through a harsh economic time, and by the time Shujaa were winning in Singapore, they were not going to renew their contract. Very fortuitously, in 2016, SportPesa came on board. But by the time SportPesa were coming on board, no sponsor wanted to touch Kenya Rugby. No sponsor wanted to touch Kenya Rugby. But SportPesa came with a very healthy package that was primarily, it was for Kenya Rugby. 15s was good.
So not for sevens?
Not for sevens, it was for Kenya Rugby. 15s was good, 7s was good. The Lionesses as well got some breadcrumbs from that, unfortunately, and we should support women's sport.
I think we should.
Now, unfortunately, SportPesa fell out with the government of the day, and towards the end of 2017, they had to pull out the sponsorship. Now that's when rubber hit the road in terms of problems, mashida, because basically now mko uchi. Yeah,
that was ilikuwa Gangland ilikuwa.
Yes. So now around that time, what happens? No, Omwela. It was Omwela.
2017, Omwela.
That was Omwela's second term. But again, the issue is the people who came, the directorship, because Richard Omwela is somebody who has lifted the game to great levels. Have utmost respect for him. Sasha Mutai as well served under Richard Omwela as a director, served under Mwangi Muthe as a vice chairman. But I'm talking about the problems. So from here now you get, what can I say, piecemeal sponsorships. Just come and go. And at the same time, ile tu breadcrumbs. Yeah. Oh. At the same time, we were living on the glory of Shujaa, having won in Singapore. And the relegation threat was now becoming real. So a series of near misses. 2018, 2019, when the likes of Vincent Onyala were making their debut. And back then it wasn't as crazy as it is now. It was literally at the end of the season, you literally have to finish in position 15, just above, because one team was going down. So they survived. And then COVID came, and then there was a false sense of security, because one of the series around that time, must have been 2021, just had three, basically, I can't remember how many legs, 1 or 2 legs. Shujaa finished, I think, second or third. So, based on that,
we survived.
But again, remember the core squad is growing old. There isn't much coming through in terms of talent from the lower ranks. Now, while Rugby decided to restructure the Sevens series to also accommodate the women, so both series are now
running concurrently,
and they both have 12 teams. Drastic cuts. So you come in, Damien McGrath, he's worked wonders with Canada, with Samoa. Simply couldn't do that over here, because again, he's the kind of person who comes and builds. But you come and find a place where a system is very broken and relegation was inevitable. Why was it inevitable? Because governance obviously did play a role. Like I said earlier on, you lose goodwill with your sponsors, so nobody wants to touch you. And I remember even being in a social setting one day, so I was introduced, hey, that's a rugby guy. This is a random person. They're like, oh, you rugby guys, you don't pay people. Couldn't even us guys in the office. And I want to speak for my former colleagues at the KRU Secretariat. That was a great team that I worked with. They were bearing the brunt, delayed salaries and everything, because you have to make sure that other functions of the organization are working. So how do you expect
somebody to operate and come to work if you're not paying them
levels? Now, that's how we got there. So how do we get out of there? Again, it comes down to, what do we want? Yeah. And I blame the affiliate clubs of the Kenya Rugby Union, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who elect the people who go onto the board, right? And the kind of people that are getting onto the board, I'm sorry to say, have nothing to offer. It's pretty much, if you ask me, the Kenyan rugby politics is a mirror of Kenyan politics. So a little breadcrumbs here and there will get you into office. Once I'm in office, me niko sawa.
And you know, Mike, what do we want?
What do we want?
And that has run imefungwa.
We want to qualify. Acha nikwambie, si sasa tuko 2025. We want to qualify for World Cup ya 2027. Ya 15s. Haiwezekani. You have to start planting these seeds years in advance.
And now the politics, and I've seen the clubs are issuing statements and waxing lyrical about how they want the off the board sorted and the chairman to explain certain things. So they are part of the problem.
They're part of the problem. Some of these clubs are poorly governed. Some of these clubs are one-man shows. Yeah? So it's like the pot calling the kettle black. Yeah?
So
ujiangalie kwanza.
So at the end of the day, and I've seen there's an order for arbitration.
Yeah.
But you know, again, I want to speak as a student of law, and I have interacted with the Sports Act quite extensively and the Sports Disputes Tribunal. What exactly is this arbitration going to look like? Who is coming to the table, and what grievances are we dealing with? Because if you ask me, we are talking about straight indiscipline that needs to be dealt with by application of the rules. We shouldn't be talking about spending money to pay an arbitrator to deal with issues of people being indisciplined and people just not doing their job.
Yeah, who is it going to benefit? I don't know who's going to benefit. And what does that arbitration mean? It means simply, you guys sort out your problems so that the game continues. Yeah? Plain and simple.
And I know John, chairman, senior counsel. You know, that is exactly his philosophy. He'll be like, you guys sort out your problems. You need to agree.
Yeah.
And
because now what's happened is that there was a suspension issued against the chairman. So obviously that is expected to be lifted, and also his access to his email and the accounts. On the other hand, there's the officials whose terms are coming up for expiry under the Sports Act.
Yeah.
It's not going to be mentioned. You know?
But you see, the other thing, I think we need to be straight here, Mike.
Yeah.
If you are elected and your term is coming to an end in 2026, the law does not apply that you leave office before the stipulated time, because the same Sports Act says that you hold elections as per the constitution of the organization. So just because somebody has served, and I'm just trying to apply my mind here, if their 8 years has ended before the term, then there is one problem that we need to deal with. You can't send people home merely because of that. Then you go into a transitional phase. But then the other bigger problem that you have to deal with is to then align the provisions of the Constitution to the Act so that there is consistency in terms of the term of office. So that is, I don't think even that is something that we need to be talking about. I honestly think it's a waste. It is a distraction from what the real issues are.
Yeah.
So, chairman amefukuzwa. Chairman amefungiwa email. Chairman ametolewa ati sio signatory wa accounts.
Ametolewa kwa WhatsApp group.
So, who is this who's more powerful than the chairman?
The rest of the rest of the directors.
No. Mike.
The secretary.
How does the secretary become more powerful than the chairman? Because the chairman, de jure, the chairman is the most powerful person. We are saying de facto that the secretary, who is an appointee, who answers to the chairman.
He's also elected, eh?
But then in terms of pecking order and protocol,
I get you.
How do they become more powerful that they can affect decisions.
Yeah. Look,
even against the chairman.
It all boils down to the conflict of interest. Right?
So majamaa wamekaa wakasema huyu jamaa is the adui wetu.
Huyu mpiaji. So aende. Yeah.
So Sasha, how do we help Sasha here? And not to help Sasha, but by helping Sasha, what he represents in terms of what Kenya Rugby Union needs. How do we get out of this? Because I don't see this arbitration going anywhere. Because let me tell you, you know those arbitrations, munafika kinaumana mnasema let's vote. Yeah. Wale jamaa washagana.
No, the trouble is, my biggest fear is that probably Kenya would go down the cricket way. Yeah, in terms of just literally going down to the grave. Now, it comes down to the representatives, the clubs. Yeah, who are you voting for, right, to sit on that KRU board? But also, why is it that, what is it with the board positions that attracts people there? Because you want to act like employees of the secretariat. You want to also have executive powers. You're all up in the secretariat employees' faces calling about. You should be creating policy that is going to be executed by the people in the office.
Which brings me to a question.
Yeah.
Board positions are not remunerated. They're not paid. Right?
They're not paid.
They are not paid.
They're not paid.
So what motivates people to come into the board?
I told you, the illusion of power. Because power takes you places. So you'll go somewhere, I'm the director of national squads, so I'll travel with the teams, point A, B, C, D.
And get some allowance.
Allowance. And even more really petty and mundane things like, what do you call it, apparel. I mean, honestly, that you guy, it's almost juvenile to see that scramble for
merchandise.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Your men and women of dignity, you should be creating policies on how we want to play the game, where we want to be the next 10 years. But no, there you are. It's not bad to look for sponsors. It's not bad to look for deals that will help the organization. But you also want to profit from them. And that, for me, is where the problem lies. Because it's about service to the game. It's not about profit to the game. So once you're in those positions, remember I said the rugby politics mirrors local politics. So you invested in your election. So once you get into those positions of power,
you obviously want to
recoup your costs.
Yeah. So let's take this, because we can't have this forever. But the conversation, of course, goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking for the last 3 hours.
Yeah.
Let's take this a notch higher and talk about the greater Kenyan problem of sports administration, because then this points to that's what we need to deal with. We were talking about Harambee Stars and FKF, now we're talking about KRU. You've given an example of cricket, and you will talk about several others. Judo, for example, or taekwondo, people are fighting some. AK, they've never held elections. We have a stay forever. Nobody knows when that would. So this mess, do we, and sometimes I really look at it and ask, who sits at the sports ministry, and whose brief do they have to sort out and fix our sports? Because, and I want to say this without fear of any contradiction, that sports has also been identified by the powers that be, especially under this administration. I know previously it was happening, but not at the scale that it is happening now. Wash. Sports federations ndo sasa zimekuwa laundry. All the illicit money from illegal betting, match fixing, and crazy things that people have done in the country inaoshwa through sports federations in the name of participation in international competitions. And for me, there is the other obsession we were talking about off the record, about how every governor, every minister wants to build study ya 60,000. Lakini ukiangalia study, other than the brick and mortar, they don't have an idea of what else, when you're talking about sports infrastructure, contributes to the making of an athlete. Share with me I know we have, but for the sake of those people watching us, your philosophy of what we need to do at that level to sort out our philosophy, because you asked, what do we want? Tunataka kufanya nini na sports?
We need to have a sports policy. We need to make sports cool, you know. Me and you were told twendeni shule tusome tukue daktari kama Bosire. Yeah. Tukue engineer kama Milton. You never told about sport. Sport is a waste of time. Yeah. We need to have that policy. We need to encourage people that this is also a place where you can have a livelihood. We need to look at the socio-economic impact of sport, right? But what we do have is merchants in places of power. People who will, for example, commission a project that will never end so that they can continue to benefit from funding. People who will find themselves in positions of power so that their cronies can always give them opportunities to benefit from, again, the most mundane of things, like apparel, like trips to exotic places in the name of benchmarking or attending tournaments. But we don't have people who want to give service to the game, service to the sport. Yeah, we need to have examples of what sport has done for you and for me. We need to have people, and I dare even call out leading sports personalities, both current and from the past. They need to come out and say what sport has done for us, not only for them, not only in terms of elevating them to global stature, but what it has just done for their lives in terms of being able to be well-rounded people.
Yeah.
But that is not happening. So with that, remember, sport is viewed like religion for the masses. So it's easy to get in there and blind people with a few fancy projects here and there, while you are benefiting from all the resources and all the powers that come with it. Sport is being used as a stepping stone to riches and to mainstream politics.
And you know, that's why I said, for example, and I stand accused. This is something I believe because I have seen it. I have an idea. I get a lot of information about what is going on. And sometimes you wonder whether, and like I said, Mike, you don't have to mention any names, but I can. You know, you ask yourself whether the person holding the yam and the knife at State House actually really cares about the country, really cares about what is happening in sports, really cares about the impact that some of the decisions they take in terms of the personnel that are in charge of the Department of Sports as a ministry, whether they really care about the youth of our country who depend on their talents and who will not be A students. And with all due respect, watu wa ball, watu tumeona waki succeed in sports, not all of them are as bright as JJ Masiga, for example, who could do well in academics and do well on the pitch. We need to be fair to people. So is it that somebody is that, yani akona unyama kiasi hiyo that, you know, hii sasa ni our failures, we can do whatever we want to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, because look at it, it's not only sport, even the way the youth are treated, it's like you're the leaders of tomorrow. But anywhere else you go, you find that the youth are actually involved in key decision-making processes for the society and for the country in general. So when it comes down to a sport, it's like hii mchezo tu watacheza, you know, our vijana will just keep them busy. That's why, for example, growing up in Nairobi, back in the day, there were fields within the city council estates. All of them are gone. All those are high-rise blocks. Because nobody cares about the impact that sport is going to have. Look at PLO Lumumba, for example. Avid judoka or martial artist. I don't know which particular martial art he takes part in. But he's one of those products, you know, took his time to engage in an extracurricular activity, but also became this well-rounded individual. Yeah. We are not seeing that anymore, and nobody cares about the impact that excluding the youth and basically the youth from these activities, not only sport but even the arts. Nobody cares about the impact of denying them the opportunity to nurture their talent and express themselves and benefit from it. You only want to benefit from them when they start making money by way of taxation.
No, because kuna pesa sports fund, so tunataka kuweka mrija hapo. And so that for me is a problem,
And it comes down back to what I was telling you. If we're deliberate about being a powerhouse in sport, we wouldn't like now be saying that it's 2025, we want to qualify for the 2027 Rugby World Cup. We'd have a policy and say, this is where we want to go, not only in rugby, but in other sports. This is how we want our teams to play. This is the kind of athlete that we are looking for. And when we talk about the athlete, it's not only their physique as well, but also in terms of we need to make sure that they have basic education, because at some point you're going to turn professional.
Yeah.
You'll be signing contracts. We don't want you to be duped, for example.
No, and even,
You know?
Mike, sport as a career, as an athlete, you last for so long. And
The
there
shelf
is life
is limited.
There is life after that.
Yeah.
And which again speaks to the story that we hear all the time. And I mean, with all due respect, we've had stories of how legends have been abandoned, they are not getting what. And, that is a good conversation to have, because maybe we were not paying these people as well as they should, and therefore their life took, a turn that is different. But even where we have had, very lucrative positions and returns for athletes, they've wasted themselves. Why? Because they never got the kind of education that gives them the skills to know how to manage, and not to do it by themselves, but to engage the right people. Because for one, Mike, and this is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, for one athlete, there could be 7 or 8 other different professionals that would make this athlete a successful person.
Agreed. Maybe even 15. Allow me to digress slightly. During the COVID period, when activities ground to a halt, I recall working late in the office at KRU, and an Uber guy came. That guy said, "Hey, mazee tunaumia." It's like, excuse me, hamuna magame. You understand? This is like, this guy is way down the ecosystem. But it's like, siku ya game, nilikuwa napiga safari hata 10 hapa usiku, fika tu 6, nachukua watu mpaka 4 a.m.
Yeah.
There's him, there's a guy for my Boilo. So when you look at that ecosystem,
yes,
everybody is tied into that one particular athlete. And now you realize that not everybody can fit in an office, not everybody can fit in an academic institution. Encourage these extracurricular activities, but instead I give you an example of a school that decides, because tuna chase grade fulani ya KCSE, sasa hata hakuna games. Yeah?
Oh yeah.
You see, so this guy got his grade, but he's also now unable to express himself, and then he's also socially awkward, because you see what sport does, you're in different scenarios. It allows you to adapt to different scenarios in life.
Yeah.
Now, I'm saying advocate for sport, but also make education mandatory so that you're able to make informed decisions. But even before you make those informed decisions, you're able to write your name, read your name, and do basic hesabu basic. Hii hata unajua 1 + 1 ni 2. Mtu asikuja aseme 1 + 1 ni
ama ku confuse that 1 + 1 huenda si 2.
Yeah.
But and so let me I don't know, we're just about to conclude, but how do the different departments or sectors of our existence and governance then plug and collaborate? I'm talking about, for example, if you're talking about building of infrastructure, you're thinking maybe there is building of stadia and other sports facilities where probably the Ministry of Public Works would be involved. You're talking about Ministry of Education, Ministry of Sports. How do they all come together to then build this successful model? I'm just trying to get away from now complaining, and because sometimes we've been accused that sisi ni watu wa kuongea tu na kuwaini. So because we have an idea of what needs to happen, so that we also help our people to say that when we are complaining, atuongei tu ati kwa sababu tuko na wivu.
Yeah.
We also speak because we see that what is being done is not right.
Yeah.
So how do we weave all these different parts so that they all contribute to making a successful venture called sports in our country? Otherwise, tuachane na history.
Again, it comes down to the policies. The more seriously we take sport and the arts, because those two are intertwined, I think we'll be able now to pull everybody together, because not everybody loves sport. There'll be people who love the arts. Now, we talked about things like infrastructure. We have stadia, which could be used for art events and also for sporting activities. And if you're, say, in a town like Kakamega, it is income not only for the county government, but for entrepreneurs around the organization. I'll give you an example, and this is from rugby. The Kenya Cup final has probably the last 3-4 years been held in Kakamega because Kabras have always been the highest ranked team. Now, what it does to the economy of Kakamega is unbelievable, right from entertainment to hospitality.
Yeah.
And you need to start looking at it
Hata
holistically. Yeah, and
Hata food.
yeah, hizo vitu zote. But sasa unasema hii mchezo nini. In fact, what happens, OCS na OCPD watasikia watu wa rugby wako around. Hiyo ndio siku sasa kuna msako, kuna name everything that is anti people. And yet you should be more welcoming. In fact, your police should be like, okay, fine, we've increased the security forces.
Operation.
And we want our visitors to have a good time, because what is benefiting you guys is the injection of cash flow into the economy. But we are not looking at it in that point of view. For us, we believe that it's a white collar jobs. So until we take sport, for me, it's very simple. Take sport, the arts seriously, change that whole mindset, get the right people in the right places, and we should go for it. It sounds idealistic because you could have the right people in the right places and then they become corrupted. But it just has to be that way. We have to be very intentional and say that we want this sector to grow. And you see, once there's the government backing, it can grow. Because my mother, who used to ban me from playing rugby, atasema, serikali inafanya ni, it will actually, because the government has machinery to communicate through the chiefs and everything.
Yeah.
Ushaenda matanga, ushago, unajua venye iko. How effective is the government with vaccination?
Very.
Kuna matangazo, then before the family comes, you sikia, wacha tulete local administration. What do you say? Kutoka leo, kutakuwa na watu wa health, watakuwa hapa na, watakuwa na chanjo. That is the same kind of communication we want, the same kind of commitment we want in terms of changing the mindsets. It sounds, again, like I said, simplistic, but there has to be goodwill right from the top, and it has to trickle down.
Being very intentional is what I like.
Yeah.
We have to be deliberate about the things that we want to change and, show a different kind of attitude for us to succeed.
Yeah.
Let's end this with final thoughts on the mediocrity that we are seeing with KRU and every other federation. We don't have to mention many names, but in terms of being straight and in speaking to power and saying, look, it doesn't matter who you are. Let's have that parting shot. Like you pussy. For me, it has to stop.
It has to stop. And for me, in fact, let me sit up now because I'm very passionate about the game. So, to the clubs, the people that you elect into those offices, they should not just serve your interests, because I forgot to say this. We find people elected into directorships who now become activists for the club and come and say, so-and-so is complaining about ABCD. Instead of, remember, you're now wearing a different hat. You are the one to articulate matters to the affiliates. You're the one to collect the views and see how these things can be factored into policies that will help the game going forward. But no, you want to come and manage squad selection. You want to come and have a say in how contracts and tenders are awarded. You want to have a say in how the organization is communicating to its public. Guys, think about who you elect, and these have to be people who are out for the good of the game. Otherwise, we'll go the cricket way.
Tabia mbaya needs to come to an end. We can't be stealing from our young people, our youth, by being so conflicted in everything that we do and being agents or merchants of bad governance. We have to end it. And I want to speak directly to Kenya Rugby Union Board and any other federation. You guys, we will mention you by name and we will continue calling you out until you get it right. We must. Go ahead.
For me, please, the secretariat at KRU do a magnificent job. Those guys need to do their job. They need to be taken care of. Remuneration in terms of their terms. Look at it this way. Director gets elected for 4 years. Many of the guys at KRU, I don't know about now, but when I left in 2024, you have a contract that is a year, 2 years. So you are working less. Your period in that office is less than somebody who's been elected. And yet you are the people who are running that organization on a day-to-day. You're the backbone of the organization. You're the people with the institutional memory.
Yes.
But you're way down the pecking order, and then the secretariat should be left to work, because right now the secretariat is at best a firefighting operation. There's decent individuals within that organization, excellent individuals. Paul Odera is the director of rugby. Thomas Odundo is the CEO. Great rugby minds, great gentlemen, the two of them. I think they should be given the leeway to work, and the directors should sit back and just formulate policy. Stop dipping your hands into the office.
And be meeting once in 3 months instead of meeting every weekend, and every other day you're meeting somewhere discussing about deals. You're supposed to be briefed. So hiyo tabia mbaya tuache. By the way, we are going to say it the way it is, because that is what it is all about. And if we don't, then we are losing it, and we would have come and gone. By the way, Mike, we realized, jana tulikuwa tunaongea, this is on a different note. We're talking about, the next big birthday that you had. 18 was significant, then 30 was significant, then 40, then maybe, and you're like, I've lived more than half of my life going by the... So if we are not talking about these things, we are now the elders. Because, we are now the elders because our parents are not there. So please, and the powers that be, we've had these conversations before. Mvuria, William Ruto, kabla uende, because Kenyans are saying you must go. I don't know when, but please do something. Show that you care for these young people. Show that sport means something. You gave a promise. Kenyans are asking you questions. When they ask you, please answer those questions, because the mess we get ourselves in. And by the way, sports has no tribe. So don't go political about, don't go tribal about this. It is not tribal. We are simply saying, guys, do the right thing. The two of us here, and some of us that we interact with, have no interest in being officials of these federations. We are simply saying our interest is that let good governance be part of the DNA of these sports organizations. Then once that happens, we have the brains and the capacity to deploy our skills in different ways for us to also contribute. But don't gatekeeping na nini kusema sijui Mike nini unaekwa kando because maybe you are going to ask certain questions. You opposition. For now, our brief is on KRU. Sort out the mess. Na hata kama mko na issue na chairman Sasha, mrudisheni kwa WhatsApp group. What is this problem that we have with this country with people being removed from WhatsApp groups? What are people going to do? He is still the de jure chairman of the board. So arudi WhatsApp group, arudishwe. If you have issues to do them. Arbitration is coming. John, chairman, maximum respect to you. Try and help us to get this thing sorted. And ikibidi, sometimes you could bring down a house to start anew and build it all over again. I believe in that, by the way. But if you have a choice of not doing it, do the right thing. Enough of that. Keep following us on Kurunzi News. We will keep talking about these things. And we are now an expanded team. And so you can look out and watch out for what we say, because we will say it exactly the way it is. Thank you for watching. Keep following us on YouTube, on social media, and everywhere. And follow us so that you can get up to date with the thoughts of different people like Mike and others who come to the different platforms that we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you.